Hey, it's Brian.
Hey, it's Barry.
It is Nate.
And welcome to the Collecti-Bros podcast. Today's topic of discussion will be about the jump from games going to 2D to 3D. I mean, most of the time you hear this conversation, it's usually the inverse, right? It's usually games going from 3D to 2D or unsuccessful attempts from 2D to 3D. We're going to talk about a little bit of all of that. But first, let me invite you guys to follow us on social media. We are on every major platform as Collecti-Bros Pod. Primarily active on TikTok, but we everywhere. Don't forget to check us out on Discord. Our invite to that is in the episode show notes.
Good job, Brian.
Yeah,
thanks.
Solid,
bro.
That's solid, yeah.
Juices flowing, energy. No transition whatsoever, though. But yeah, let's just dive into it. This is just a discussion episode.
What about our playing pickups?
Yeah, guys.
The structure is gone.
It is. See, bombing already. That's how it goes. So is life. Nate, what'd you pick up? What you been playing?
So as far as pickups, it is pretty light. I did score a nice Walmart clearance deal, though, finally. Sorry, Barry, I know you're still hungry for the loot.
Don't get them ever.
Got the Yakuza Like a Dragon Day 1 Steelbook for $10 on clearance sealed. When you find this game new, it's either missing the slipcover, the Steelbooks beat the shit. $10, I really can't complain, man. So I also picked up a couple of loose games that were just trying to get achievements on before they closed, but nothing like noteworthy. A couple of the F1 games. But Yakuza's the big one. For $10, I've been wanting to get this game since it came out. It's just one of those things you put off and forget, so was blessed with that. As far as playing, I've been playing a lot. It's weird. I don't generally dabble with a lot of games at once, but the monster that is Witcher 3, I've not progressed in the story at all. I've been dabbling with side quests for the last 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks. So still playing it. It's going to be all year. It's going to be in the list pretty much so because it's so dense of a game. Very easy to get lost in the world. Every little side quest you do feels like it's actually important to the person you're getting it from. And like there are some just like, hey, go investigate this and that. But like to that character, it's like, oh, hey, my fucking sister got murdered by a creature. Like, so it actually feels like you're contributing something to like that little village or something, which is a super cool feeling, and it's super like character building and world building. So they all fit in that game is what I've noticed so far. Every single side quest doesn't feel like it's going to fill time, which y'all know I love Elder Scrolls, but there's a lot of quests that are just like, we had to put a quest here because like there's only 3 in this village and it needs a 4th. It doesn't feel like that in this game. Like there's a lot of villages that there's nothing to do until later or whatever, but like you'll go post a board and it makes you feel like you're actually the occupation you're supposed to be controlling Geralt, and it makes you feel like you're actually playing as Geralt, and it actually fits in the world. So like A+ quest design, which y'all played this game a decade ago, so y'all know this, but like I'm experiencing it for the first time and absolutely loving it.
You played Gwent yet?
Yeah, I've been playing Gwent. I'm not slamming Gwent, but I'm playing Gwent. Like it is addictive, dude. It's like it's a game in a game. So
Gwent's the best.
Gwent's super fun, dude. I mean, I played like before they shut the servers down, I played the actual like Gwent game they had.
It's completely different.
I was going to say it's different.
Completely
though.
different
It's different.
rules. I don't like the Gwent standalone rules.
I didn't either.
The ones inside of the Witcher game, they're simpler, they're easier to understand. They want to add on too much extra stuff in the Gwent standalone.
I agree 100%. Like
so I'm not a fan of that.
I think the beauty in a good card game or a good board game, I don't want to get too off topic, but sometimes like when simplicity and then like with strategy, and it makes it timeless. That's why chess and checkers, people still play them because like the rules are fairly basic. The strategy behind it's like where it gets complex, and Gwent's a perfect example of that. Gwent's like literally like if it came out as just Gwent when it wasn't Witcher, it'd be a super fun game to play. Like it's so good of a well designed game. So yeah, I've been playing Witcher. Brian and I've been boosting F1 2011 through 2014. I think the servers are going down.
Oh yeah, and for the clarity, that 2014 is like the $200 fucking one.
You're about $200 off. It's $400. It's the cheapest one available
What?
right now. It is the lowest printed NTSC Xbox 360 game. So it is.
I mean, I know it was like a thing a couple months ago. We were talking about it.
Well, now the servers are going down.
It's worse now.
So it got delisted, and
Did
the
you guys
servers
get
are going.
it?
Hell no.
No, I'm not paying that much for
Is
it.
it digital?
got delisted.
It delisted. Yeah.
Already?
So the crazy thing, though, with this game...
Move on. Be like, no.
Yep, I'm just not going to get
Sometimes
it.
you just take an L, man. Like,
the crazy
whatever.
thing really quick, though, is it's one of the only 360-era games where the Japanese version, the PAL version, it's all region-free. So if you can find a copy of it before their servers go down March 24th, you can grab any region and it'll work on any region.
I've seen a PAL version for $40. It's just being able to ship it in time for us to get a copy of it to actually play. So, but yeah, I've been playing those, trying to get back. What happens a lot of times during the baseball season is I stop playing the show. Been trying to dabble back on the show, so like I don't jump into this new one that comes out next month with like, because last year I was like, oh shit, I forgot how to play this, and like, so I've been playing that a little bit, but not a lot, just like a game or two a day, and still struggling through 2K. I've only put 18 full-length games in 2K this year because it's just not good. Like, I already spoke about it when I purchased it, but NBA trade deadline was last week, so the rosters are completely different. Everyone that actually plays 2K knows, like, they actually put the game how it should have came out when it comes out after the All-Star break. It's a big update. Clean up a lot of, like, the cheese problems with it. Fix the defense normally. So I've yet to play a game yet, but I will be, I've been dabbling. I started a new franchise. I've been dabbling that, so I'll give 2K a shot this week. But other than podcast games, Witcher's been the majority of my time when it's for fun. Brian, what'd you pick up and play?
I actually had some awesome pickups. Literally on my birthday, Limited Run, sent me some stuff I bought like 6 years ago, it feels like. But I got the Doom Eternal Collector's Edition on Switch. That thing is awesome. It's loaded up. Just to have a physical copy of Doom Eternal, this one of the games that felt like it was truly a pinnacle for those consoles on a Switch is still wild. But I also got Day of the Tentacle on Xbox, the Collector's Edition, and the normal edition, because we'll get into that whole fiasco. Because I also got Doom 64 on Xbox, the Collector's and normal, thinking that the Collector's Edition would have a different case for the Xbox version. It's literally just the PC extras with another disc. So I have 2 copies of Day of the Tentacle and Doom 64. And guess what? Every limited run Xbox game, I've ordered the normal and the collector. So I'm pretty much going to have doubles of all of them if anybody's interested. I'm just going to bring them to the shows we do and stuff to try to sell. Or, if y'all are interested. But the Doom 64 is pretty cool. It came with a replica cartridge. It's like a big heavy metal N64 cartridge. It's red. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of good extras with Day of the Tentacle as well. It's in the classic PC big box design. So I also scored some Walmart deals. Nothing crazy. I got, they're like single digits. I'm talking $8 or $9. So like, I'm not going to let, new games sit there like that, even if it's something I don't really have interest in playing. Destroy All Humans 2 reprobed on Xbox Series X. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, which actually I've been wanting to play that because it looks pretty interesting. I believe there's like a VR version also. Obviously, you don't get that on Xbox, but whatever. And then Justice League Cosmic Chaos. I don't know a lot about it. I saw Mr. McPlizzix on the cover, and I was like, hey, give me that. But it was like $9, literally. My favorite pickup that I got, Like a Dragon Ishin Steelbook. I don't know where this came from. I don't know if it was like a pre-order exclusive or what, but the Steelbook's dope. Like, I had no idea they even had a Steelbook for this.
From what I saw, it's a GameStop pre-order exclusive that was pretty limited.
Nice. Yeah, I got a pretty good deal on it. I think it was like $9, right?
It was $8.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, all day. It's beautiful. It's in great shape. Same day, I found 2 Lynx games complete in the box for like $20. I didn't have either one of them. I am a complete in box Lynx collector. It's a library I'm pretty sure I can get everything on. So when I grab them, I see them. It was Super Squeak, some kind of puzzle game with the insane cover art. Y'all should look it up. It's on the Discord. And then Crystal Mines 2, another puzzle game. But shout out to the Lynx, man. The Lynx is an interesting console to collect for because you're collecting carts and they come in these little tiny boxes. Smaller than a Jaguar box, but smaller than a Game Boy box.
It's different size and shape than a Game Gear box, too. It's definitely like its own thing. It's almost like a cassette.
Yeah.
Like, if you turn a cassette on its side and have a vertical cassette standing, too, it's about that tall, that wide.
Yeah, they're really fun to collect, so I'm glad to pick those up. And then lastly, the only other interesting thing I picked up, Nate mentioned it, we're doing the F1 games for the server closers. So you know how most developers, when they had online passes back in the day, they were just kind of like, yeah, we're going to let this go for free. Well, for some reason, Codemasters said, fuck y'all, we're not doing that. You need a new copy, or you need to find a code that doesn't work. So Nate and I went all over town trying to find a copy of like a code that worked. Couldn't find one for 2013, 2012. So I had to go on eBay and buy a new copy. And the copy they sent me, everything's in Spanish on the back of the box, but it's an NTSC copy. So it's interesting. Now I have an English one and a Spanish one. As far as playing, Nate mentioned it. I'm not going to beat a dead horse.
Many people forget Mexico is also North America.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, which is funny. That's why like El Chava Kart's so expensive.
That's why the Invisimals on PSP or the Vita.
Yep.
Oh, there's
because it was only released in a Latin American country. I think it was Mexico, but we never got it in the U.S., but it's technically NTSC.
Yep. He was saying
same way.
Very
Chava
expensive.
Kart.
Kart's
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah, it's funny. North America is not just it's not the only. It's crazy. Geography does wonders, man.
They're like, why does my NTSC have French on the
What the
back? And
fuck
I'm
is
like,
the French
because
here?
Canada exists
That's
too.
not
I
France,
don't
bro.
know.
What the fuck? Anyway, go education. Playing, yeah, Nate mentioned it. We're doing the Formula 1 games, but I actually had a lot of fun doing the career mode on 11. Nate and I were the masters of disasters of the shake and bake because I had to get first place for the achievements. So we would literally do the shake and bake, Ricky Bobby the whole time, just cracking up. Nate crashed or something once. He went from last to second by the end of the season. It was actually really fun. We did it till 2 or 3 in the morning, just cracking the fuck up playing that. It was a really good time. Stuff like that's when streaming would be great because we're just stupid, sleep deprived at 2 in the morning, driving Formula. I know nothing about Formula 1 racing.
Yeah, we had to learn the rules, and it's funny because Brian and I are both pretty big into sports, and first race we're there's rules we're used to NASCAR, bro. You can just take people out and start fights. It's no, there's actually civilized people who do Formula 1. So that was fun to learn the rules and stuff. You have to pass a certain way. You can't cut corners.
Yeah, we were trying to just cheat,
civilized individuals.
ram 'em.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get my wheel well stuck between there and spin them out. It was penalty. What? Come on now, just race them, brother.
Can't swap paint.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I actually had way more fun than I thought I would. But
Until 2012.
the big one I've been sinking my time into is Power World, man. I get the hype with this game. Because even I think last time on the podcast, I was I'll check it out. I got it installed. Bro, I got 40 hours in this game already. And Sherry's got 80 hours into it. It's a time sink. It is addictive. I get the hype behind it. And the fact that, 20 people made this freaking game, it's pretty remarkable, man. It's not done. We're going to they seem to be supporting it. I think within the first week of release, the Xbox had 3 patches already, which is pretty unheard of. They're dumping money into it. They're dumping time into it. They're trying to hire a team. This is the Pokemon game that we've been wanting forever, bro. It really is. I love the survival elements are really light. It's not it's an insane survival game. If that's scaring you away like it did me initially,
Yeah, it's not intimidating at all.
yeah, don't be turned off by that. It's there's light survival elements just to keep it interesting. But
There's also world settings.
exactly. Yep.
So if you don't like dying and losing all your shit, you can turn it off.
Yeah, it is really customizable. And like I said, it's not perfect. It's still in game preview, which is fine. But, I've experienced less bugs with this than I did a lot of quadruple. We're on quadruple A.
We're on quadruple A games.
We're on
now,
quadruple
boys.
A games. That's
oh,
right.
yeah, sorry.
Than I have in quadruple A games. So, Power World's what I've been playing for the most part. It's very addictive. It's very fun. I've got one world where I'm playing it on normal with all the standard settings, and then I've got one where I've just kind of maxed everything out to kind of see where I can go on easy and see how much you can build and what's the difference. And yeah, both of them have seen about 15 hours each. It's a blast, man. If you have access to it, if you have Game Pass, it's a no-brainer. Download it, play it. They still need to work on some of the multiplayer stuff. The Xbox version is a update behind basically than the Steam version. So if you have access to the Steam version, I'd say play Steam. But it's worth checking out if you have Game Pass for free. I have nothing but high praises for this game. When it's all said and done, it's gonna be something. What about you, Barry?
And all I'm gonna say is if Nintendo is actually gonna sue them, they would have done it by now. Anyways,
It's not like they don't have the money to do it. Exactly.
And it's not like Nintendo owns the monster hunting genre. I hate to burst all these Pokemon fans' bubble, myself included. But there was monster hunting games before Pokemon.
well, the whole thing is they're thinking they put Pokemon into an AI and got the designs from an AI, but you know what? At this point, I don't really care. If
We're
I get
living in a
Pokemon.
simulation anyways,
Yeah.
bruh.
Whatever.
Dude, the game's a ton of fun, and that's why I play games.
As far as what I've picked up, it's not much. I got Persona 3 Reloaded, and I know it's on Game Pass, but it just feels like a sin to not have an Atlas game on my PlayStation, so bought it full price. I don't really care.
It's a game I want to support anyways. I'll
Yeah.
buy a physical copy of that game for sure.
playing like Atlas game ever, and I'm like, it launched on all the consoles.
Yeah, at the
this
same
thing This is
time.
the first time it's ever launched on all consoles.
I think it is the
and
first
PC.
simultaneous.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not just PlayStation, and because Persona 5 when it came out, it sold a lot, but it was only on PlayStation.
Yeah.
PlayStation 3 and PlayStation
It was
4.
between consoles.
It's the first mainline one, right? Because Tactics was on everything, right? It was a
Which
spin-off.
Tactica.
No, Persona 5 Tactics or whatever.
Yeah, the spin-off
But
or
yeah,
whatever.
it's a spin-off. Doesn't count.
Right.
It's successful, and I think it proves the point of like people do want to play it on other platforms. So I hope Atlas puts all their games out on it like that. And then I did order from PlayAsia, so I'll just say what I bought because I'm not going to be getting it for like weeks now. But I got the Kemco RPG Selections Volume 2, 3, and 4,
Nice.
which include As Divine Hearts 2, and some of these I already have. Like Limited Run was like, we're going to do limited run physical copies of these, and then, Asia was like, we're just going to print them in a collection. So some of these I have doubles of, I might end up just selling, So I'm playing Persona 3 Reloaded. I've put about 30 hours into that. So I'm trying to hopefully get that one done before Final Fantasy comes out. But I also want time to play the first remake again. Yeah. And Intermission again.
I think I'm taking the week before you take off work to catch up, and then maybe calling sick when you have work scheduled off.
I'm just like, who cares? Just be like, I'm sick.
I literally have 120 something.
Yeah, whatever. They can they've survived. They can survive. They're fine. Maybe they need to figure out what they can do when we're not there, because I ain't there forever.
I was like, no, I'm not going to stop playing everything. Yes, I am. I'm going to play this game so bad.
And then I've been playing. I played a little bit of Enshrouded, which is. I really like that game so far. It kind of brings back the idea of exploration, like the actual interest in exploration. So, it's one of those survival base building kind of games, but there's things off in the distance from ooh, what is that? And you naturally just kind of want to go and explore. So it gives you some quests of locations that you should go check out, but it really encourages you to kind of look in places. So the actual building is really impressive. I was playing with a friend, and you pretty much put an altar down and you have a square of space that you can build inside, but I don't know if it actually specifies how high or how low your limits are. So we just dug a hole, and now we're just building an underground bunker, and
Nice.
we're doing the first floor, and then once we get the first floor done, I think I want to see if I can build lower and see how far down I can go. So we have this little tiny shack built on this piece of land. And then if you go inside the shack, there's the stairs that go down under it. So it's just digging a hole. I'm just digging a hole the whole time until it hits the boundaries. And
Pop out the other side of the globe.
yeah. And then Pal World, I don't remember how many hours into it I put that one. I'm stuck in the level 30 to 40 grind, and I was just like... I stopped playing it because Persona came out. I'll get back to it at some point since they've fixed the catch rate thing.
Yeah.
I played that, and then I think at this point, just between school, I don't really have time to sit down and really do anything, so I've just been playing ESO. I tried playing a rogue. I made a new character and played a rogue, and I'm like, I can't, so I went back to my other Templar character. It's just better. I don't know.
Are you playing the new expansion?
No.
Okay. I saw you were playing it. I ended up installing it again.
No, it's on Game Pass, and they give you pretty much the base and Morrowind, I think, for free. Yeah. So once I go through all of that, I might pick up the membership thing, because the membership gives you access to every single DLC except for the newest one. So
from experience, the membership thing's worth it if you're actively playing the game.
Yeah.
Barry and I both
You
done
can
it
always just
before.
turn it off. Yeah, it's
if you're
it's
playing
$15 a month or something.
It's 12 when I was doing it, I think.
I think it's 15 now.
Okay. It's still worth it
the
all day.
Activision acquisition, bro. It's up to 15.
When we were playing it, it's even if just one of you has it, it's worth it for the damn space alone.
Oh,
it's that crafting bag, man.
Yeah. So I'd just drop your shit and give it to me. I'll hold it for you.
It's a crafting bag.
Yeah.
So
what a great game, though.
Yeah, I just get on there and I get my little login and I do my little crafting writs. So we have a new segment to introduce we're going to be doing a Collecti-Bros favorites of all time bracket off. I don't know anything about sports. I just know it's in a tournament style bracket.
Tournament elimination tournament.
Elimination tournament. Thank you, Nate.
It's 10 games each. And then we have 4 that are automatically in the
First round buys, yeah.
Whatever that means.
Final 4 buys.
Drafts. I don't know. I'm the last person you should ask
34
about.
games total.
A bracket we're going to do, we've agreed on 4 games that are going to be making, at the very least, the top 8, I believe.
And the quarterfinals automatically. Yeah.
Whatever that means either. So I'm the best one to introduce this. I don't know anything about it. It's fine. So later in the year, we're going to have all the culmination of it. We're pretty much stacking them up against each other and then talking between each others about why one should move forward and why one shouldn't. So we're going to introduce some of our picks as episodes go by. Today we're going to introduce first 2 in the brackets. First one. Actually, did we finalize this?
Yeah, we
I
did.
think this is the final.
This is the final?
Yeah.
All right.
We said there's room for moving stuff, but this is what we basically determined.
Also, I think we should clarify, this is literally, like, the way the question came around was Barry was like, hey, 10 games that, like, if you had to tell somebody it's, like, your favorite game, not necessarily, like, the best games ever. So there was some overlap.
Yeah, your top 10 games. These are personal top 10 games. These are not best in the world.
And you'll catch on to that pretty quick.
Yeah, you'll understand. So these are like our collectively favorite games, and we're going to come to the top 10 favorite games of the Collecti-Bros. So the first bracket is going to be one of my picks.
Oh, God.
Monster Hunter World.
I'm losing this one so bad.
Monster Hunter World. No. We haven't even gotten there yet. Monster Hunter World's my pick. I nominated this one because I think it is the best Monster Hunter game. I don't care who you are. Rise is not better than World. It's the most approachable it's been. It pretty much put Monster Hunter on the map in terms of being accessible for new players.
My first Monster Hunter game.
Because Monster Hunter games prior to this they're really difficult to understand how to play. Brought Capcom back up from a hole, set the standard for Monster Hunter as it is. World's why we have Monster Hunter clones now.
The movie.
Yep. Great movie.
But it was a big enough deal to get a movie. Like, that's humongous. You know what I'm saying? Like,
this is like this is probably in my top 3 favorite games personally. Nice. So second one is Nate's.
I picked Daggerfall. I love Daggerfall. There's still things Daggerfall does better than the rest of this series, in my opinion. Unfortunately, it is technologically limited if you play it now. There is Unity updates that help with that. But as far as true RPG, which if y'all are Elder Scrolls fans, you know they've just gotten completely away from, I still believe this has one of the best like character creators not as far as what they look like customized wise, but actually building an RPG character in any game ever. It has the biggest map still in the history of any video game ever. It is a landmark RPG, and the fact that you have to run back then is truly remarkable. I think if you play it now, if you go in not expecting quadruple A, graphics, like you would still have an amazing experience. Like, this is one of the finest crafted RPGs ever made. Arena's very primitive. This one's like expanded upon, and
you gotta save it for the bracket, buddy.
I will. This is why I picked it. I love Daggerfall. It is
giving us ammo to beat.
I know.
It has no chance. Let's be real. It's against Monster Hunter World.
This is Ace Attorney,
okay,
bro. You gotta save your factoids.
We're not deciding anything. These are just the introduction of the brackets and why you picked it.
I can shorten it down. I played Daggerfall as a novelty because I wanted to play every Elder Scrolls game, and I fell in love with Daggerfall and completed like a full playthrough because it was so good still to this day. So I think it'd shock people if you played it. So Daggerfall's my shocking first round.
That's our first round matchup, Monster Hunter World versus Daggerfall. Second round, Brian, one of yours.
Yeah, so my first...
Okay, I'm sorry. This isn't second round. This is just the second bracket. Yeah.
I won't hold it against you.
Because I know everything about sports.
Sports ball. My first pick in this tournament was Pokemon Red, surprisingly. I'm not a huge Pokemon guy, but I think this game is a great introduction to RPG elements, and especially in that handheld format on the go. Honestly, it's one I never grew up with. Like, I would have it and I'd rent it every once in a while, but I never owned a copy until later. It's a great first step, lightly introducing the elements. It introduces you to the characters, and it's timeless, man. You pick it up now, it's still fun.
Real quick, is there a reason why you picked red over blue?
Charizard.
All right.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's not a lot of differences between the two. There's certain Pokemon or whatever. I don't have. I never called them all or whatever. I'm the fucking poser.
Red had Growlithe, right?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, easy.
Yeah, but
easy
like
win over blue.
even as like my favorite color is red, and so a little kid, it's like deeply impacted into my soul that red's the better version.
Pokemon Red is up against
One of Nate's picks.
the other of Nate's picks we're gonna introduce today.
Phantasy Star 4, the pinnacle of 16-bit RPGs, often overshadowed by the all-time classics on Super Nintendo.
Pinnacle of 16-bit. Okay.
It's right up there with Giants, and it gets overshadowed because of the console it was on. I love Final Fantasy 6. I put Phantasy Star 4 right up there with it, and it doesn't have as much exposure, so I know it's got an uphill battle, but as far as mechanically and long-term storytelling, it was truly ahead of its time.
I mean, honestly, when people talk about top 20 RPG lists, this one's always in it, but nobody's like played it.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
played it
like
on my cell phone a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's when I first put it in. Like, it's amazing. I was literally like shook how good of a game it was, and unfortunately, it was like the last real Phantasy Star game too.
Yeah, unfortunately,
So
I feel like Phantasy Star as a franchise is super underappreciated. So
it straight up was.
sucks.
It was so good they had to stop. But Phantasy Star 4 is the pick.
the next setup, and I'm going to just go ahead and preface this with there are a lot of RPG games in this entire tournament.
That's the beauty with RPGs, though. There's action RPGs, there's strategy.
There's
RPGs,
a lot of them.
There's
I'm gonna say it's the superior genre, but like, who am I to say that? Anyways, Brian, do you want to introduce your pick for the next set?
Yeah, again, nostalgia got me good, but y'all know me. We actually did an episode on this game, and it kind of just reminded myself why I love this game so much. I picked Spider-Man. It's just called Spider-Man. It's
Yeah.
2000. It's the one that Neversoft made. Without going too deep into it and giving all my aces up my sleeves away, I do think this is the pinnacle of Spider-Man. Even how primitive the game is today to today's standards, as we talked about in our episode, you still feel like Spider-Man, and there's powers and abilities that Spider-Man has that are introduced on a first 3D attempt for Spider-Man that make you feel like Spider-Man. What a great first effort. What a timeless game. Like, I would literally weep if they did a remaster for this game. Like, I adore this game. I love this game. Spider-Man's such a huge part of my life for so many different reasons. I would be a fool if I didn't pick a Spider-Man game, and for me, this is the one.
PS1 Dreamcast.
I mean, honestly, it wasn't to our episode, folks. It was a plug. How about that plug? Dreamcast.
And Spider-Man's going up against Witcher 3. So if you know me, this game's going to be on this list. I picked this game. I think this is the prime example of how an open world game should be, a prime example of how side quests should be structured, and a prime example of the best tutorial stage of games that I think a lot since this game has came out has taken inspiration from. This is one of those games that like comes out and sets standard.
Oh yeah, I wish everyone could follow. By the way, but
There's not a lot of games that come out anymore that do set a standard for like what the next generation of games should be, and Witcher 3 was one of them. It had a rough start when it first came out, but it didn't take as long to fix as Cyberpunk, I will say that. This one is definitely a top 5 for me, top 3, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's so many good games out there.
Yeah, bro, I ain't putting numbers on these because...
So many good games. But...
Well, that was part of the fun with this. We were having trouble like seeding because it has to be random because like we just it took us we ended up it'd be a 45-minute conversation for one game of where it should be seeded. And I was like, you know what?
I put them in a random generator and then spit out exactly what it told me, and
I think it's
we're
more
gonna
fun.
duke it out then. So
It's definitely more fun like that because we get some where it's kind of like, I don't want to say obvious, but then we also get some where it's like, damn, this is the first round. So this is gonna be a fun one, guys.
And we'll go ahead and introduce one that was a collective agreement that makes the semifinals. The first one on our list we collectively agreed on was Chrono Trigger.
Spoiler.
For obvious reasons. So that one is slated further up in the bracket, and whoever makes it within those first 3 and a fourth soon to come is going to fight off against Chrono Trigger. So
Yeah.
you know what? We'll just say what the last,
We'll just
what
do
the
the whole
last set
quadrant.
is.
We'll just
Yeah, the
introduce
whole quadrant. The last one, Nate, what's your game in that quad?
Yeah, so I picked BioShock. Almost like Barry said about Witcher, a standard setter for sure as far as narrative storytelling in a first-person game, and then really set the standard for quality of a game for that console generation, truth be told. There was not a whole lot of hype going into that game, but what came out of it definitely there's BioShock clones. There's still people trying to find inspiration off BioShock. Right when I was able to start appreciating video games as an art form, BioShock came out, so it definitely impacted what I expect in narrative storytelling in games. So I picked BioShock. I think it's one we all have experience with too. So yeah. BioShock's going up against oh boy, Barry.
BioShock's going up against my.
This one's your pick, but it could have been
one
mine
of my
too.
Picks. Yeah, Two Worlds. Ooh. Two Worlds. If you know us on this podcast, Two Worlds. You know what? At this point, this is like literally within my top 10 like favorite games, and I think this is, if we're gonna keep saying it, the pinnacle standard of how great shitty games can be, because this game is shitty, but it's great.
Yeah, and like we all have an appreciation
favorite
for those. Like, this is like, if there's a game for our podcast, it is Two Worlds, dude. Like,
Two Worlds is like one of those games that feasibly we can't play for an entire episode on this podcast, because like, is it worth it? Yes, and it's worth like $3 maximum. But it would be one that I would love to eventually do on like a stream or something. It's so much fun.
Need to pop my Two Worlds cherry.
I can't like not. I don't replay a lot of games. I think all of these games that are going to be on my list, I will 100% replay. And like Two Worlds is one where it's just like, do I want to have dumb fun and replay a really crappy game? Yeah, I'm playing Two Worlds and I'm not thinking twice about it. So while Two Worlds might not be the most respected game, it is one of my absolute favorites. So that's the first set of games, and one of those is going to go up against Chrono Trigger. That's going to be our first set of our tournament bracket. That's going to be happening later this year. I'm not sure if it's going to be a 1-part or a 2-part or an extended episode quite yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Or special, who knows?
To ultimately decide the top 10 Collecti-Bros games.
Let's get into it. 2D to 3D. So I know growing up, it was always like pretty much always garbage was the conversation around this. Was every cartridge-based game that made the jump to PlayStation or Saturn or even 64 was always dog shit. But after a recent game that we played for Is It Worth It kind of got me thinking a little bit. And I'm like, it's not always the case, man. There are some really good examples. And I think Nintendo honestly kind of carries that crown of like what to do with a 2D game to 3D game. I mean, obviously the easy example is Mario 64. They put the most basic 2D game of all time and made a masterpiece when it went to 3D. It's really the blueprint, I guess, for how you make it. And Nintendo's really done that successfully with almost every single one of their franchises. If you look at it, it's really interesting. I think more so than any other developer. I don't want to sound like a fanboy or anything, but it's pretty hard to argue with the results. I mean, the jump from Zelda remained quality. Metroid switched genres and remained quality.
Kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
So it's still, that's the thing with Prime. It still plays like Metroid. There's still a big sense of exploration. There's still a traversal element to it. It's not just a first-person shooter. It's very much a Metroid game in a first-person perspective.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. But, I mean, it was such a jaw-dropping jump. I remember it was like a hot-button issue when it first came out was, is this going to work? Like, what is it? People were nervous, man.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But they did a really good job, obviously, executing that. I think every major Nintendo property, more so than any other developer, they've done the best at it.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is if you look at like all of their characters, they have a very long line of the same kind of people working on the same games like throughout history. It's Miyamoto still doing the things he started on. Like they're all still involved. So it's easier to naturally evolve when you have the same kind of people that created the mechanics and designs for the original to kind of bring it to a new dimension, you know. And plus Nintendo, they have they're Nintendo for a reason, man. Their approach to how they make a game is a little different than everyone else. They come up with a mechanic to kind of work around that. They implement one of their like extremely established franchises or properties into it, and they don't try to make. I don't think they approach like how can we make Mario 3D, because the fad at the time was like it has to be 3D or no one's going to buy it.
Yeah,
they wanted to make a good platforming action game that happened to have Mario in it, and it worked extremely well. So like that's kind of how they've always approached everything. So,
and then really, I think one of the biggest. Obviously, Mario 64 looks great, but the control, man, like that was the big issue with early 3D games. It was figuring out the camera / the movement. Like analog control wasn't. I mean, obviously it was available on the console, but it wasn't like a staple, especially in platforming. Because I mean, if you look at something like the worst example I can think of, I know Barry, you're going to bring it up.
I won't bring it up.
Well, Bubsy 3D, you won't bring it up.
No. I thought you meant Castlevania.
Oh no.
I'm not gonna bring it up.
But yeah, but I think Bubsy's like the example in most people's heads where it's like, this is not how you do 3D platforming, where the camera is literally stationed behind you and you can't see a damn thing. You can barely move the camera. It's like a fixed camera almost. And, you literally have to use a D-pad to move the character. There's no analog support, if I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, PlayStation couldn't use, like, especially early on until DualShock came in, they couldn't let the developers, like, develop something for a thing that didn't exist.
You had to pray that you had support with the bumper buttons to like hopefully move your camera.
So, I mean, this one doesn't have DualShock support because I'm assuming it came out pretty early. It was 96, so like it just didn't have DualShock yet. So, I mean, once DualShock was implemented, it completely changed the playing, like the field, because we didn't have 2 analog sticks.
Yeah.
64 didn't have it, and it was always the crutch of that game, or always the crutch of that console. Dreamcast didn't have it, and still like to the crutch of their 3D games. I mean, it came out with 1 analog stick, and they never were just like, let's get 2. So, I don't know. There's ways to get around it, and a lot of people didn't utilize the ways to get around it because they, I guess, don't know what to do with all the buttons they have after coming off with the...
It's funny because, like, is it a misconception or is it a true thing that, like, the C buttons for the 64 controller, that stands for camera?
I don't care what it stands for. It is 4 extra buttons.
Crap is what it should stand for, but that controller sucks. But it is true. That's actually a good point about the PlayStation kind of being at a disadvantage initially, because literally a controller for 64 out of the box had an analog thumbstick in it. It's kind of interesting.
It's like they didn't know what to do with it. It's like, okay, what was it? That's GameCube. GameCube had the same problem, right? GameCube had 1 analog stick.
Y'all wanted a gray one.
It
had 2?
Yeah,
okay, it had a C. So they have a C stick now.
Yeah.
Okay.
They finally learned.
But Prime, you had to, like, strafe and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't... because I don't like the controls in Prime.
Because the lock, yeah.
Because you have to... It's like the aim lock, which is freaking stupid, but whatever.
Thank God for it's fixed in the remaster, dear Lord.
Whatever. I don't think that Nintendo did a very good job with control schematics in the 64 and the GameCube.
I don't think that's a hot take at all.
I don't
they did the best they could,
ever
but
could figure it out.
See our previous episode.
I don't really think it's, like, difficult to have... on paper, it seems like, okay, use your analog stick to move a character, and now you can use your bumpers to move the camera left and right. I'm like, but we're in a 3D environment, and I need to look up and down. Like, why can't I look up and down? And I know there's some games where they do use the D-pad so you can adjust that camera, like, left, right, up, and down in increments, but not a lot of them used it. They would use the D-pad for, like, a utility.
Yeah.
Or they would use the D-pad as an additional move your character, so you could move the character with a D-pad or an analog stick. And I'm like, you were just eliminating the option of, like, 8 potential buttons with diagonals. Like, that's stupid.
And a lot of times, if you, like, there's games that let you go into first person to look around, but you had to be stationary, so it defeats the purpose of, like, let me readjust this camera. It's weird how 3D back then was not about, like, your surroundings. It was like, yeah, your character environment's in this 3D environment that you have no control over.
I don't know if it was like just the struggles of like adjusting, developing for 3D, because early on, but like Barry kind of hit it, it was longer than just like that initial jump. We're talking a whole console generation. Like there's still some games that just could not figure it out. Like, oh, we're gonna go fixed camera, or it's gonna be dynamic and change as you go to a different room. It's interesting that we still had that problem for so long.
Yeah, it did stay for a long time, and it spread across genres, developers.
And it was also like, you had 2 like common solutions for it. You either had the camera stuck on the character, and wherever your character turned, it turned that camera, or it's like the camera was sort of stationary, and if you would move in a circle, like the little model would move in a circle, but the camera wouldn't move behind them. So then if you adjusted your character to face you had to hit a button to like center it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I think Tomb Raider did that one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did.
And like I feel like Tomb Raider is one of the example of ones that did it better, but it still like wasn't great.
So have you gone back and tried to play Tomb Raider recently? Dude, it's tough,
It's
man.
difficult. I mean,
You're
I feel like
fighting
at the
camera
time
more than anything.
it was a better example, but still
all we
like
had.
it was still bad, you know.
Yeah, it's all we had. That's true. It is funny though, even like third person games are the easiest ones to pick on, but like first person shooters didn't have it figured out on console yet. I remember, was it Aliens was it
Resurrection.
Resurrection, thank you. I knew it was an R, dear Lord. That had a revolutionary controller scheme where the right stick controlled the aiming and the left stick controlled the walking. And everyone's like, this is horrible, but now that's the standard. But even first-person shooters didn't figure it out because it used to be strafing with the right stick and then going forward with the left stick. It was crazy. But, I mean, that was like growing pains, sure, but the fact that even like modern control schemes in a 3D game, looking around in a first-person shooter was a new thing. I remember when Mech Assault came out in the original Xbox, we had our dad play it, and he was like, you couldn't get used to being on the same stick. And I was like, no, it's easier, man. Like, this is walk, right one's look. And he was like, this is such a foreign concept. Like, and it wasn't that long ago, you know. But even up into the original Xbox PS2 era, we still had that issue. And that was a third-person game, but still, I think a little bit of it was controls, trying to figure out, you know, the layout of buttons, growing pains. But also, I think the biggest jump, especially early on, was just like making games in 3D was new for all these developers. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
I feel like the sweet spot in like the 64 and PS1 area, if they went 3D, was to have, I don't know what the camera scheme is called. It's like an area camera where like you could move the character around in the 3D environment, but it would like you would look down and like see it like it was like God of War. Like God of War, I don't really know like what that camera schematic type is called.
It's like action, but it's like not fixed because it moves.
And it does get annoying sometimes where it would like you could, you know, it would be like a still picture and you'd be moving around in a still picture and there'd be shit where I'm just like, I need to turn. I can't see. There's a stupid cliff here. I can't see past it. But I also didn't have the problem of like colliding with a wall 24/7. Yeah. So I feel like 3D games that did that were more successful in my opinion, where they kind of kept that like two-dimensional style of kind of isometric top down, but we're not really on a grid anymore, or we're not a side scroller anymore.
Yeah,
it's a depth thing.
It's like, look at that versus like Devil May Cry was the one I thought of. You know, that where it's just like fixed and it doesn't move.
Same deal. Yeah. And I feel like that Devil May Cry wasn't. I think Devil May Cry's problem with the camera was their choice of angles to put the camera at were fucking poor.
They looked
they
cool.
weren't
It was
good.
like in that Resident Evil fixed camera.
Yeah,
bro.
it looked cool, but like there would be so many points where I couldn't gauge like how high or how far or where I was in the space for
Depth
a
was
jump,
tough.
and you would just fall. And then like it would do that stupid thing where you could jump up and the whole camera would shift mid jump, and then I was like messed up where my landing was because I'd be moving my stick up, but then the camera would shift and he would like go up in that space. It was Devil May Cry was a trip. That's for sure.
It's like
it's something.
I don't know what to call that camera, but it's true. It's like if spatial surroundings important and being able to tell how depth, especially in platformers. Like if you're jumping the platforms, like good lord, let me at least see how far I need to jump. It's like your situational awareness, damn near, is the best way to describe it. It helps a lot for platforming, particularly back then. And then I remember being stuck with games where it's like stuck behind you. Good luck. Hope you make this jump. There's no save stats either. Like, have fun. But what are some bad examples you think, or what are something you think that held back games from transitioning to 3D? Like, I'll start with a really easy game. I feel like that doesn't make an impossible jump. It's had some success, you know, going to 2.3D. But the Contra series, man, I remember when that first came out on PlayStation and Saturn, it was like a really big deal that like Konami's, you know, moving some of their major games in the 3D. See our previous episode. Contra was up. I loved Contra as a kid. And they decided to go with like this weird, you're set behind this character moving in a 3D environment.
It's kind of top down, but kind of not.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a twin stick shooter, but you don't use the twin sticks to shoot because you can't shoot at an angle. It's like almost a pseudo 3D. It's not even a real 3D. But I don't think there's been a truly great 3D Contra game ever. I think the closest we got was like the PS2 era. But I think sometimes the genre holds back that jump from making 2D to 3D. I think Contra's a really good example of that. There's a reason why most of these, classic run and gun games stay in a 2D planar environment.
Yeah, but Contra is a run and gun game, which is in a sense is a shoot 'em up. It's a different dimension, it's side instead of up and down. But
Right.
like, there's not a whole lot of great 3D shoot 'em ups because the type of game doesn't translate well. They make the graphics 3D, but you still play on a 2-dimensional plane because
Right.
it's too chaotic. It's the beauty. If you like shoot 'em ups, which I know they're like you either love them or hate them, there's no in between. It's like it's just hard enough, but it's just easy enough too. You can grasp what the hell's going on. You can like sit there and like hyper focus on it. Okay, bullet hells. They don't work in 3D. There's just too much shit going on. So yeah,
Unless it's near.
yeah.
The only example, but it's
Contra
yeah,
is,
it's cheating.
a great example where you ask people of a certain age, 40, they're going to be like, Contra's a shit. You ask anyone in their like 30s and they're like, Contra's not nothing. Like the original one, okay, like I get it, but there's no allure to anything post the NES, to be blunt.
I mean,
Like Super Contra obviously is great still,
Yeah.
but like
Contra 3.
once you pass 16-bit era, it's not.
I would say the 3DS one's the best they've got. But again, it wasn't a true... Yeah, it was 3D graphics, sure.
You can make an argument Contra 4 is like a pillar of Super Nintendo. You can make an argument
Yeah.
OG Contra is a pillar of
It's
NES.
2.5D, which...
Contra 4 is a great game,
Yeah.
but it's not like a pillar of your 3DS library.
Right, and it's 2.5D. It happens to have 3D polygonal graphics, but the gameplay itself is on a 2-dimension plane.
I think it's very hard to make like running guns and shoot 'em ups.
I'm honestly sitting here trying to think
3D.
of one.
Because it's just not a genre that translates well, man.
Yeah, I think the genre itself can hold games back, and I think platformers took a while for them to figure out, but I think eventually we've got it.
Well, it's like the most natural one to make a 3D game for, but at the same time, it's also like if you don't know what the hell you're doing programming wise, like imagine all of the difficulty with that. And that's why we got those really rough early games where it's like companies felt really pressured to make 3D once the console started being able to like do 3D well. We had technically some 3D on Super Nintendo with like Star Fox and stuff, but like once you had these consoles come out that were like, hey, they're 32-bit, they can actually do it. Companies felt pressured they had to make 3D, they have to keep up with the times, and you got some rough games that were forced in a 3D perspective because 2D wasn't cool, and it's unfortunate because some of these games would have been a lot better as 2D games.
Oh yeah, I mean graphics were like everything. I mean a lot of these, even like getting reviews that were positive that would sell your game back then was based on how good are the graphics. Like we don't care about the gameplay, which is
Sure.
crazy now.
I know Konami, I know not to stay on them, but they had a struggle because Castlevania is another pretty good example where Symphony of the Night came out and ended up being a beloved game. There's like a revisionist history with that game. They really like got dings on some reviews because it wasn't in 3D. They're like, they played the safe approach. Now it's like the genre defining
Right.
Castlevania game. But at the time, they felt pressured to make Castlevania 64 because like they were worried people weren't going to buy Symphony of the Night. Now people played Castlevania 64, so went back and bought Symphony of the Night and it became a greatest hit afterward. But like Castlevania doesn't work in 3D, bro. The combat's too simple and the platforming's too like strict for it to be successful. And like it's too Castlevania's combat is too simple and limited.
Yeah.
If you're in a pure traditional Castlevania to make it 3D, so it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I think that's very fair. And again, we are picking on Konami, but it's probably my most beloved developer for retro games. But even they kind of had to switch the game up entirely to make a semi-successful 3D version of Castlevania. We didn't get that until what's the PS3 and 360?
Lord of Shadows.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We didn't get that until Lord of Shadows, and it's a God of War clone. So I mean, they had to change Castlevania in its heart and its essence to make it work for 3D, which it feeds our argument even more so. The genre can affect games from making that jump. What other genres do you think are held back from making that transition?
Those are the main ones I can think of. Because you can make arguments for pretty much if you adapt to 3D space. Like, cause I remember when Fallout 3 was announced, everyone was so worried it would like ruin Fallout, and clearly that's not the case. So like, I think if you adapt it into that and take what works and what doesn't, if you're a smart developer, you can kind of adapt from most other genres. I know you kind of had one.
Yeah, and it might be a hot take, 'cause obviously there are really successful examples of 3D fighting games. But if you think of like the big two, their first transition to 3D, like Mortal Kombat specifically, was not...
What was Mortal Kombat's first one?
4.
Well, technically the first one was the Sub-Zero anthologies.
Yeah, it's a spinoff though.
But yeah, it's
But,
also a
Mortal Kombat 4 was
Yeah,
3D, and it was
this is the first full 3D one.
they had to basically re-release it to like fix it because it was just not well received.
And guess what? It's still ass. I don't care. I don't love Mortal Kombat 4 at all. I mean, I own it because I have them all. I'm a big fan of the series, but it just doesn't feel like Mortal Kombat, and it kind of took some adjustments. And I don't think they got it right, honestly, until Mortal Kombat 11.
You
Or
should
X,
know 9.
sorry,
Jeez.
9. That's what I was thinking of. Mortal Kombat, whichever one was called Mortal Kombat. It's 9.
I feel like it also didn't fully commit to the 3D jump. It felt like it had to present 3D, and it was running behind, and a bunch of other franchises have already made a jump, and they were like, well, this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like when that game came out, they were like shoehorned in 3D, which anytime that happens, like you're doomed. There's a reason, I think, in fighting games specifically, there's still so many that choose the 2D approach. You look at Fighters, Marvel vs. Capcom, even though it did 3D graphics, it stayed on a 2D plane.
Yeah.
And unless you're like built as a 3D fighter, like a Soul Calibur, a Tekken, it's tough to jump, dude. If your mechanics are established in 2D, it's a really tough genre to jump into 3D.
Yeah, I agree. Street Fighter struggled early on, too.
Street Fighter had immense struggles. Like, make it now, they've got it figured out fantastically. Street Fighter's arguably the best fighting game on the market right now. So, like, they've clearly adapted to it well. But, again, there were some serious growing pains of how to, like, translate those mechanics into a 3D fighter. And to be clear, 3D fighter is like sidestepping to me, not the graphics are 3D. Like, you have to worry about every single angle. So
I agree. But yeah, definitely had some growing pains. I think you're correct.
as a genre, it's interesting because like literally there are 3D fighters people like don't play fighting games that love. Like Barry loves Soul Calibur because it's like a great 3D fighter, and it would not be as memorable as a game in a 2D fighting. Like what made it holy shit, this is a great game is that it was 3D fighder.
I mean, I play 2D fighters. I just only play one of them. Two of
Guilty
them.
Gear,
Guilty
yeah.
Gear and fighters. Like I don't know. I mean, if you want to talk about fighters, like not fighters the game, but the genre.
S, not Z.
Dragon Ball's always kind of been a weird one.
Yeah.
Where they have like the behind the shoulder fighter. They had, like Budokai was like a 3D, but it was also like a sidestepper, but it was also a sort of 2D. And then, you had Ultimate Battle 22, which was the hottest piece of Dragon Ball garbage like we've ever had. And then like you go back to, Super Famicom and you've got Dragon Ball 2D on there as well. So like I feel like Dragon Ball games like suffered from the same like identity crisis. And I don't really think they've ever gotten their own identity as a fighter. So Dragon Ball is a weird one because it's like at a core it's a fighting game, but like my opinion is Xenoverse is the best one. But that's more like an RPG sort of open world / arena, 3D over the shoulder fighter.
Feels the most its own.
It's kind of similar to like, Budokai Tenkaichi, but Fighters is also like an extremely well made 2D fighter.
ArcWorks has the 2D fighting figured out, man.
So they
T.
do, yeah. Like honestly, like the best 2D fighters in my opinion they make.
Yeah.
Certainly the Kings right now.
I don't think there's.
I don't think there's anyone close in 2D, honestly.
No. But they do like this weird pseudo 3D thing at the same time. It's interesting how they can like manipulate a 2D plane to make it seem 3D, but it ultimately is a 2D fighter. And I think they really only play with that in like cutscene graphics and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But it's still like really cool cel shaded stuff. So I mean, I play 2D fighters, but Soul Calibur's dead. Sad to say.
I don't want to like speak it into existence, but I'm afraid you're right, especially since we're getting Tekken 8 before we get into the Soul Calibur. Like that was a shocking reveal to me.
They did it to them. They did it to themselves. They did it to themselves, and I don't feel bad for them. They pandered to the. We're gonna give you eight fighters, and you're gonna have to pay full price for the rest of them. And I'm like, that's why 3D was the best, or 3 was the best, and I don't care.
I feel bad for us. It's like we all love Soul Calibur here.
Yeah.
Like we all grew up on it for God's sakes. And
what's the sad part is like I'm such like a big Soul Calibur fan that like 6 like they're featured like other character with Geralt, and I've played that game all of one time because it just got so boring because there's no variety in fighters, and I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and pay for the other like 5 available you have. Like, we just go back to play 3 when the roster is like 4 stacks and 4 rows of just people.
Or I could just create someone that's not there.
Yeah, like whatever. Like,
and there was enough shit unlocked back then you could like literally make whatever.
Right.
You have to buy parts.
You didn't have to buy parts. You had to play the game to get the parts. But I don't know. Just that's the plight of the online market for anything.
But yeah, I want to touch a point I thought on Dragon Ball for a moment. Like, that's a very hard one to adapt to 3D because you're already dealing with a 2D property. But if you want to put the mechanics of that property into 3D, you have super speed, teleporting, flying, like beam shooting. That's a very like tough cookie to put on in a 3D. But you have to make it look 2D because of the you can't like decide to go for a realism look. Like that would everyone would shit their pants. Like see Dragon Ball Evolution, but yeah, that'd be so hard of a game to adapt, but they've done a fairly good job overall, I think.
I know
I think it took a while, but
Definitely, but that one's got so much extra shit attached to it too, bro, because you have an extremely passionate fan base. B, limited, like it has to be 2D, but not.
I was going to say we haven't seen a lot of gameplay for, what are they calling this, Shining
Burst.
I want to say
or
Budokai
something.
Tenkaichi 4.
That's what it is.
You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm hopeful for that. It looks really good. Like the perfect blend of 3D with 2D aesthetics, like hand drawn. Like I'm pretty excited for that.
Like I don't think there was anything wrong with the Budokai Tenkaichi series. If they're gonna go off of the foundation of what Xenoverse is mechanically, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because that game plays really well.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get lost into it. So I'm curious on like where they're gonna take it. It's Shining something.
I can't remember.
I feel like it's like Shining Burst or I don't know.
So I want to keep saying Zero, but
it's
right.
BT4, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I think they're just trying to westernize it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Dragon Ball fans didn't really have anything good until PlayStation 2 era. Like we had the crumbs on PS1 and GT and Ultimate 22 were all hot doo doo. And then like, we didn't get any games on the Super at all. I mean, there's like 5 or some on like the Super Famicom. I think there's a couple on the Famicom too, but like they never came over to the West. So we got the crumbs finally on the PS1. And a couple here on the Game Boy Advance and whatnot. And it wasn't until the PS2 era we actually were like, oh wow, this is doable.
Yeah.
It's weird. I think fighting games might be the only genre where there's a harsh divide between 2D and 3D still to this day, because I think everything else is kind of transitioned over, right? I mean, there's some RPGs out there, but they're still like kind of pseudo 3D at this point, 2.3D.
I mean, RPGs have just there's RPG and then there's just so many branching paths of styles of RPGs, so it's not like any of them is more successful than the other. I mean, you've got straight up 2D and you've got 2D, 3D pseudo, and then you've got completely open world hack and slash style, and then you've got the whole 3D platforming, but it's also turn-based style, so it's like I don't think that's a genre that suffers one way or the other from a transition.
Yeah, I think people were way more strict on it than they have any right to be.
And I think that's why, like, I honestly think, like, Super Nintendo is one of the best console generations ever, because, like, everything that came out on that it doesn't age.
Aged very gracefully.
They still make games in that style, and, like, it looks prettier because we get more pixels to shove inside of a sprite now, but, like, the style's still there, and it's one of those things that, like, you can make an RPG, like, kind of like Sea of Stars came out recently, or you can make a good one in a quote-unquote old-looking style, and it still looks really well. Like, not everything has to be 3D, and I think it wasn't until I feel like last generation that people were realizing that. So,
because it was ingrained to our skulls when we were kids growing up with the PlayStation and the Saturn. It's like, it has to be 3D. Yeah. The graphics are the only thing that matter.
Yeah, well, I feel like it wasn't. I don't feel like it wasn't until 360 and PS3 where like the 3D push was so aggressive because of like the introduction of high definition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, if you really want to see what high definition can do and like convince us to buy their products, like they were pushing 3D so aggressively. And then like after that, fad faded off, it was like, all right, PS4 and Xbox One era, we saw a lot more two-dimensional games resurface because it was like, okay, we've been here for 7 to 10 years now. Can we go back? It's cool, but like everything's HD standard now. Like 1080p is just a standard. You don't have to sell us.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, 4K, and I'm like, I still play it on an 1080 monitor, bro. Like I don't care that much.
Yeah, for some stuff like a lot of Metroidvanias out there now. Like it's Ori.
It's like the fad
Ori's
indie style right now is like Metroidvanias. the one thing I will say that's interesting as far as indie games, there's been like a little slight push here the last year or two of like PS1 style. People are like basically making games that look like they're from this early 3D era, and I think we can all universally agree it's like the area that does not translate well is when you go for realism in the early polygon era. And it's funny that there's a lot of indie games trying to look bad on purpose.
Boomer shooters, bro.
Oh, it's so interesting that like people, I just don't think people care anymore about graphics. I think that if graphics are in your argument, then you're like one of those people that just plays the same 3 games every single year. But like, look at the popularity of a lot of indie games. Like, they look like hot doo-doo. Nobody who plays those like cares about how they look, though. They're like, what is this gameplay offering me?
It's a good thing.
I mean, you got, Battlefield Roblox over here. What was that other one? It's like a really crappy like war game.
Oh yeah, the demake game. That's not
Whatever
really
that
yeah.
whatever that one was. I
What was
mean,
wrong with my brain
you've
today?
got Lethal Company over here that's like cell shaded doo doo looking monsters clipping through and getting sucked in, and it's like funny. Like it's just the physics are funny, and we don't care so much about having the pores on somebody's skin. It's
BattleBit remastered.
yeah, that's what it was. I mean, I guess we can have it with like AAA, but like AAA is okay. Like, okay, you got some really cool graphics, but your game runs like garbage. So like, which one do you want?
I almost feel like it's only really like exclusives that get judged super harsh on how they perform, because that way people can start rallying around. They're like, see, that console sucks. Like, no one cares if you're just playing the damn games. Like, it's a really weird thing people get hung up on nowadays. But back in the early era, 3D was like Brian was saying, there's reviews that were skewed because the game was 3D. It would review better because they tried, I guess. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've gotten away from it.
I just vividly remember like GamePro and Game Informer were the 2 like video game magazines I read growing up, and there was just like, oh, if it doesn't get a fucking 4.5 or a 5 in graphics, and the overall score is going to be so greatly affected, because they could tell you like, oh, you've played this game before, but the graphics, holy shit. And it was like, that was years. I'm talking 10 years
Right.
of like make or break games. Because I mean, back then it's like you had to sell. There wasn't a ton of sequels. Like, everything's a remake and a sequel now, but back then, like, it was all original IPs pretty much getting one shot. So
I mean, like, I'll be first to sit here and tell you, like, the environments in Starfield were gorgeous, but, like, it is just, like, the icing covering the shit cake, where it's, like, it looks pretty, but then when you bite into it, I'm just like, okay, I see, like, it's almost...
Dry carrot cake.
Yeah, it's a dry carrot cake with the kind of nice-looking icing, but then even the icing looks bad when you start seeing your eyeballs pop through your eyelids. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like as a whole collective, like, the community doesn't really care so much about graphics, but when you look on it on a larger platform basis, like, I don't know, something big like a conference or like TGA, like, they want to push graphical stuff like nobody's business.
yeah.
And it's like, y'all are disconnected right now. We don't care.
It's
We
true.
want to play our dumb little games that we can, like,
Bro,
have really, like, a lot of fun in. We don't care if it looks like a block.
Right.
Yeah.
You ain't wrong, because like, even like one of the big selling points on these 2 generation consoles is like, yeah, they're 4K compatible, but they support 8K. Name one fucking game that supports 8K, and I'm the asshole who bought the fucking TV that supports 8K. Like, I'm part of the problem. But you ain't wrong. Like, developers and...
You over here having a great time with
3 games
Turnip
that support
Boy.
it. Yeah, it's exactly.
Having a great time with Turnip Boy, and it's like,
You can't look at
you
those
play
graphics and not
Turnip
start
Boy on
laughing.
your 8K
Yeah,
TV.
exactly. Exactly. That's you're just proving the point even more. Like,
It's not my cup of tea, but I know Minecraft was a huge success, and it's an eyesore whether you like the style or not. But like, I think it helped like a newer generation kind of just be okay with gameplay over graphics too. And like, I'll give Minecraft a lot of credit for that, because day one it looks rough, still looks rough, but people love that game. People have dedicated, like, since they were children, they're still adults now, still playing that damn game. So like, it was a big one for me. That's kind of like, people kind of realize, like, there's some, if the gameplay is there, the graphics don't matter like people used to think.
Right. The graphics don't matter. I mean, I think it matters if they function.
Sure.
But whatever style you pick, like, I don't think people care anymore as long as they're getting, like, good content out of it. And I think that's lost on a lot of, like, companies that make multi-billion dollars and don't understand, I guess, what the average Joe. I don't know.
Glorified tech demos,
Yeah, pretty much.
walking simulators.
Pretty much. I mean, and that's not to discredit that, like, some of these games coming out that are 3D focused and 3D based, like, don't look really well and play really well. Like, to me, functionally, like Final Fantasy 16, like mechanically ran exactly how it was supposed to. I didn't have issues like you would have had with other games that would come out. I don't expect to have the same problem with Rebirth when that one comes out too. So it's not to say like, oh, don't buy into it, because they still make really good looking games, but it's interesting though. Like, Spider-Man 2 was a great example of like a weird experience I had with wanting to run performance mode, but performance mode looking so poorly from what I expected it to look.
Which, just to clarify, you're 100% correct on that. I went back
You
and
tried
touched
it?
And my jaw almost hit the fucking floor.
The buildings had
Yeah,
no
dude.
textures
It's
on
like
them.
mud or clay.
Yeah, it looks like they're
weird.
just made out of Play-Doh. And so
I
I
almost
just...
shit my pants, bro. I said, oh.
So it's an odd thing with AAA games for me. I don't really care too much about graphical things, and I usually play those new games like in performance mode because you want to say, oh, like fidelity and what is that lighting thing, like people
Ray
talk about
tracing.
ray tracing and blah 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 and all this fancy like graphic stuff. I'm like, okay, if I'm playing it on PC, I turn them down so it doesn't like roast my shit anyways. But if I'm on the console, I'll play performance, and Spider-Man 2 was literally the one example I can think of that was so poor I changed it back. And that's difficult to chew on sometimes. You're like,
Well, it sucks when you
damn.
buy these new consoles for how much they cost, and then like me, I bought a TV as soon as they announced these new consoles. I was like, "Yep, I'm gonna be future proofed." Man, like again, like we talked about, there's literally Gears 5 multiplayer, Fortnite, Call of Duty, the only 3 games that still support max settings on these consoles. Like,
Well, and
what?
even then, like the argument's like, well, if you want max settings, like get a max PC. But I'm like, you guys do understand how much a 4K monitor costs, right? Monitors are on a whole nother level than TVs.
Exactly.
More than your PS5 or Xbox Series X. yeah.
Combined.
Right.
I could buy both of them.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, they're not cheap. A lot of the times, the monitors cost more than your graphics card.
It's just absolutely
funny.
insane. Yeah.
But like, I can buy into the argument of like, if you want performance, like get a PC and you're gonna get the performance. But like, I can't get the display
Right.
per the cost. Like a combo of like getting a nice 4K TV. 4K TVs are dirt cheap now.
They're the standard now.
They're
Like,
dirt cheap.
yeah.
You get 60 hertz and you get 4K, and if you want more than that, they're going to go up. But like, obviously in PC gaming, you expect a 120 minimum, and like 120 4K monitors are not cheap at all. When I bought a monitor recently, and I was like, I'm prioritizing performance over graphics, and I got another 1080p 100, I think it was 244. I don't really know what it caps out at, but I was like, I want a smooth play. I don't want it to chug. I'm just going to set my little settings down, whatever. So I can see the argument on both sides, but like the jump to 3D isn't so necessary anymore.
Yeah.
We can revert back, and there's a lot of games that have reverted back to 2D and have been successful.
100%.
You guys got examples?
Of recent ones that's reverted back,
It doesn't have to be recent. Just
Metroid.
I agree.
It's had a whole rebirth.
I
since
mean, I
going
didn't
back.
play it, but
It's crazy because
I
that
could see
game
it.
did so well. We used it in 3D also. Like, it did a great job of like going to 3D, but also reverting back to its roots. Like Dread, fantastic. But the one that still sticks out to me the most is the Metroid 2 remake. Look at a Game Boy game. They turned it into a 3D game. The game's fantastic, and it still holds up, and it's literally why we got Dread. So say your thanks and prayers in Metroid 2. But that was the big one. Yeah, I was going to use that one also. But another really good one for me, I think that most people sleep on, like sports games in general. Once they made the jump to 3D, I think most of them excelled extremely high, particularly baseball. It was a rough launch initially, but I think it really hit its stride like Xbox, GameCube, PS2.
Bro,
era.
baseball games in 2D.
But not seeing that depth was
You're
so
just
fucking
like,
wild.
what
back
am I
then, dude.
looking
Yeah,
at?
exactly.
The sports games specifically too. I know people don't give a shit about sports games, so I don't want to take too much time with it. But you could also get away from the arcade style and start making real like sports simulators once it went 3D,
Right.
which was just not an option with 2D. Like they had to play arcadey and cartoony. But once you went full 3D, you started getting like, look at the evolution of Madden, look at NHL's evolution. Like, you could actually add depth to them that wasn't there before. And that's definitely an example where you point to 3D helping a franchise or series, a genre.
I remember, I think it was Madden 06 was the first one with like the passing cone where you could actually like put the ball when you threw it where you wanted to throw. And that shit felt revolutionary because I remember, Madden 94, 95 were like these great, beloved, 16-bit era Maddens. But like you just push the button and hope he catches it. That's really what it boils down to. When they made it like, hey, not only is it where you're putting the ball, but like where you visually are going to put the ball with the cone, it kind of, like you said, it's the whole surface instead of just 3D aesthetics. Like the actual game itself was three-dimensional.
Well, then
living world.
Take it to another step further, especially with sports games. Like you could add 3D physics to the balls,
right?
The players, like it changed everything, man.
I think baseball and Madden are the two that stick out for me the most because baseball, like being able to have the depth of the ball and then where it hits off the bat affects it instead of just literally like dice roll, like
timing / dice roll. Yeah.
It was the big one. I know people say hockey is like the one that digressed once it went 3D, but
I know that's a thing. It's kind of a weird.
Get out of here,
like,
dude.
I know people love NHL 94. Like
that's the only reason why.
And I'm not taking away from it. It's a great game. You can make an argument it's the best 16-bit sports game. But you compare it to what they have now. It's like, dude, there's so much more. There's so much more depth, and it's because there is 3D depth. You know what I mean? Like
I'm gonna start some fires here. It's a reflection of the actual game itself too, the sport. Because look at hockey now, where it's so fast paced and it's very deke heavy to get inside the zone. You can't do that with literally a D-pad and 3 buttons, dude.
No.
I'm sorry. Like the deking controls now, and like where you want to put the actual puck on the stick and where you want to shoot it in the net.
You can play it like real hockey now. Like the old ones, you have to sit there and hoard in front of the net and hope you get a rebound and slap it. Yeah,
just mashing it.
Yeah.
I mean, like the only sports game I really care about is billiards, and like I cannot imagine playing fucking billiards 2D. I need to know the angles of everything.
It's Minnesota Fats.
And exactly where I need to put it on the ball. Like, am I shooting high? Am I shooting low? Like, where is this
Could you imagine playing billiards without physics?
I know. And I'm just like, how am I going to, like, if I want to jump a ball over another one, how am I going to be able to figure out how to do that on a 2D play? And, like, this is wild. There's
like
different.
Kirby's Dream Course, baby. Kirby's Dream Course.
Even that was isometric.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's I feel like maybe more so than any other type of genre. I think sports probably got the biggest upgrade from transition to 3D.
I'll say that, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, they're billion-dollar games now.
Yeah. What about other good examples of games that made the jump? You guys got any?
I mean, on the reverse, like, RPGs made the reverse jump recently. In my opinion, I think Octopath Traveler is the one that did that and really proved that, like, that's still what people want and that's okay for the genre to move back towards. I mean, you've got 2D, 3D, or HD 2D is what it's called too. It's like you got Octopath Traveler and people loved that game and how it looked, and now you've got games like, Sea of Stars, Triangle Strategy, Tactics Ogre, Star Ocean, because like Star Ocean just came out with 2 games, I think, last year. One was a flop, and then I don't really know about the other one that was a remake, but it was a 2D remake. I think it was Second
something. Yeah.
I can't remember if it was the one on the PSP or if it was the one on the PS1. But Star Ocean came out in a 2D, 3D. Octopath Traveler 2 was incredibly successful, and they didn't really change their graphical formula. Chained Echoes is a little less HD, but like it was a very successful 2D RPG. There's a lot of them that came out. Honestly, Square Enix did a lot of them, but that's kind of their bag. But there's a lot of them like on, Steam. A lot of options on Steam for that are still good. So they did the kind of reverse where it's like, okay, we've made a jump backwards and not in a terrible way and still prove that it's relevant.
I think it's like fighting games. There's still very much like appreciation and want and need for 2D RPGs too. And then a lot of that's because some of the 3D ones got so confusing.
Yeah,
heavy.
And I think there's like a time and place sometimes too. Like I'm not like a super huge big fan of 3D turn-based. Like Dragon Warrior is okay. It's turn-based and it's 3D. Persona is a really good game. It's 3D and it's turn-based, but like I kind of like the fluidity of having real time.
Feels really
in
good.
3D, but also in 2D. Like in my opinion, I really only feel like Ys does hack and slash 2D successfully.
I'll second that.
In that, so
well.
But they haven't really. I mean, other than Origin coming out recently, they haven't really put out like an Ys game that wasn't 3D.
Right.
So I hope they go back to making like spin-offs or something of it. Obviously, like strategy and tactical RPGs like always benefit from a 2D, 3D.
Yeah.
I don't think they run their best course on a 3D platform. Fire Emblem is a good example of that because I feel like we were talking about Nintendo being like the king of it, and they've always been 2D until Path of Radiance, and Radiant Dawn on the Wii was also 3D, but we didn't get 3D again until Three Houses, and I feel like Three Houses was really when it hit its stride in a 3D platform. Because before that, like we had, the DS had one, the 3DS had 4 of them, and those are all in like a 2D format still. In my opinion, I think Awakening is the best one, but it's not to say the others weren't good, but they didn't play with the 3D. I think they had like little 3D model cutscenes of like when you would fight them, but like everybody fucking turns those off.
Right. Except for Brian.
Nobody plays with those.
Brian.
Yeah, except for Brian. Everyone turns that shit off. So like it was a really good natural transition for them on the Switch, and they never got it on the GameCube and the Wii, in my opinion. I think it was a good effort.
Yeah. And
it functioned, and I think it still had problems, but they didn't have the ability to do what they wanted to until the Switch.
Yeah, and then look at the impact it had. Like Fire Emblem's a humongous franchise.
I mean,
now.
Awakening revitalized it,
Yeah.
and then like Fates wasn't really great in comparison.
I'm gonna sound like a fanboy, but I feel like even when Nintendo experiments, they usually do pretty goddamn good job, better than most developers, with the exception of Donkey Kong, because Donkey Kong 64 is ass. Capital A, capital S, capital S. Fuck that game.
Well, that one specifically too, the early 3D games were all pretty much the same game with a different horrible coat of paint.
Yeah.
They were all collectathons. They all had camera issues, and like Donkey Kong's basically Bubsy made by a better developer, bro.
They had no excuse because they had Mario 64 as their blueprint.
And Ocarina.
All you had to do was follow that.
So
Banjo-Kazooie, it's pretty much, you're on collecting shit. Like, you had another good example right there to follow, and they chose not to. But yeah, more times than not, they do a really good job. And even, like we brought up Metroid already, they're kind of leaning back into going 2D. You look at Mario Wonder being a huge success. They went back to traditional Mario even after Mario Odyssey.
Sonic did too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sonic did.
Well,
Yep.
Sonic's. This is like a very interesting one to bring up with Sonic because like the initial jump to 3D wasn't. I know Sonic has a reputation for the 3D ones are terrible.
That open
But,
world
like,
Sonic, what was it, Frontier or something that came out? What was that one recently?
Yeah,
That
Frontier.
one,
That
which
was
supposed to
like-
be okay, but
It was cool, but there was nothing there.
So like
what's the one though, where he has the human girlfriend and
2006.
shit?
Sonic the
That
Hedgehog
thing.
2006.
the human girlfriend,
Yeah.
which one?
2006.
I think it's called
just called
Sonic the Hedgehog.
but it's
Yeah.
Sonic 06, so it's like
Yeah.
Just
affectionately
Sonic
known as-
the Hedgehog.
Dude.
But like the initial jump,
I need to get the Sonic expert in here.
the
for
initial
that.
jump from Sonic wasn't terrible. Like you had 3D Blast, you had the big 3D jump was Adventure. Those were good games. Like generally loved games. Something happened after Dreamcast, dog. Like Sonic went through like hell on 3D for a long ass time to the point, like Barry said, they eventually said, "Fuck it," they're going back to 2D because they just couldn't figure it out.
That one was bad?
Horrible.
It's generally regarded as like one of the worst games ever made.
Really?
Like talking
Okay.
to the point where it's a little pricey now because people want to play because it's so bad.
I will say Sonic is like a really big blind spot for me in terms of games.
Like real talk, 06 almost killed Sega.
Stop it.
It almost killed Sega. Like I'm not even trying to be funny. Yeah, I'm not even trying to be funny.
Wait,
but,
let
like,
me see that.
If you don't know, fall in that rabbit hole. Like
This looks like a funny crossover.
It might be, but I think it's
no,
real.
no,
You
it's
know,
real.
no, I mean, but it just looks like if
No,
they were
it
like, oh, hey, Konami, do
no,
you
it's
want to
real.
put like
Wait
a
till the
weird like
scenes-
RPG Japanese looking horror girl in here and we'll have her date Sonic? Like, this is the Sonic OC dream game.
There's like missions you have to get from people in these open world environments where like everything looks like 360 era realistic, and then you're just fucking Sonic walking around talking to people.
How much is that game?
It's like $25-$30 probably.
I low-key want to play it.
Yeah.
It's got technical problems, graphical problems, gameplay problems, but it is dialogue problems. There's some creepy shit in it. Sonic's had a rough time in 3D, but Sonic feels like he's finally found it. I don't want to say footing,
I'm
but
putting it on my list of me to own digitally.
ask the residential Sonic expert about 06 sometime. But
Well, the residential expert might not know much about the games.
Sonic's had that's true. Different kind of Sonic expertise. Sonic's had a lot of up and downs in 3D realm though, and I think we kind of touched on it earlier. It's like Sonic's gameplay, in a sense, is super simple. Go fast, try not to get hit,
like $15.
get through the level. So like,
Sorry, continue.
That's tough to translate into. Once you go 3D and you need a little more complexity than that, like what do you do? Like, oh, I need to go fast. I need to collect these rings. I need to not get hit. That's pretty boring. In a
Sounds
3D
like Wave
gameplay.
Race.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's super. It got too simple, but you had to add something. They kept trying to add something, and they couldn't figure it out for a really long time. But they've had the most success going back, and people like this new one a lot. So
That's the one that has 4-player.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
yeah.
It is interesting though. I do feel like that's the trend nowadays. I mean, I think that's the crazy part with Mario too. Like Odyssey I thought it was the best. I know it was blasphemy because Breath of the Wild, but Mario's top 3 best experience. Odyssey is top 3 best experience I've had on Switch. And for them to be like, all right, let's go back, let's take it back to 2D Mario, which
I thought everybody was waiting for an Odyssey 2, and I think the speculation is it's going to be a Switch 2 launch game.
I could see. I could also see him keep continuing because they tried to bring back 2D Mario on like the 3DS, the Wii U, and they were okay. But Wonder kind of really put traditional Mario back on the map. And then Sonic, I have a feeling going forward because they went ultra retro with what's the name of those games?
I know what you're talking about.
I want to say Origins. It doesn't sound right
There's
though.
so many Sonic games. I know what you're talking. I know what you're.
It's the first time they went back to like the original graphics design.
And it was like that and the other one in the same year.
Yeah, yep. And they did
Like,
like
back to back.
they re-released it with like it's DLC basically. God damn it! What's the name of this fucking game?
Type in Sonic games.
Yeah, there's like only 800 to sort through.
Sort by date released.
Barry, there is one franchise I want you to kind of get some thoughts on because it's got a very interesting.
Origins. It is Origins. Damn.
Sonic expert, Sega expert over here.
It's got a very interesting history because I think there's like people who are very fond of the 2D era of it, but then you like look at the 3D era of it, and it's like evolved. And talk about your favorite.
Was it going to be Final Fantasy?
Yeah, because I want to hear your thoughts on it because you've dabbled in all of it. But I think it's an interesting take because like you can't sit here and say it didn't help launch this 3D push with 7. Like that changed.
7 like changed the playing field of the industry.
Yeah.
And even if you don't like the game, like you have to admit that. But they did that thing where I think was the most successful, and why is because they had it in areas where you couldn't shift the areas and you'd move through the areas. And there wasn't like playing with the camera. There was playing with the camera in the battle. Like you could change if the camera would be like static, like behind the party and just attacking, or there was an option where you could change it and it would like zoom in on one character or like do some like dynamic camera work within battles. But like actually playing it, the stages were just there and you would traverse the stages and then it would change. You know, there was a couple times where it did that like weird parallax thing. I can remember specifically like when you're climbing up the plate near the mansion, like it would have like the background moving at a different speed. So they played with it a little bit, but not so much as like it's like dog shit to look at.
I don't think it ever got in the way of the gameplay. That's like
No,
the
and
important
like
thing.
a lot of people sit here and say like Final Fantasy VII didn't age well, and like I completely disagree.
I'm with
I
you.
think that the character model designs are very stylized. They don't look terrible. Like they're very different than what the environments looked like, but like I think they're charming. I think everything about that game still holds up. I think it's a little more rough in 8 because they tried to make the models a little more realistic, and then when they went to 9, they kind of reverted back to like a 7 stylized cartoony, but they're a little bit more
polished,
detailed. Yeah, they're more polished. So, and then when you get into the PlayStation 2 era, it's very different. I don't think there was anything wrong, in that jump from 12 and then, or I'm sorry, 10 to 12. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. I think 10 did what I think 8 wanted to.
That's fair.
The same idea as like I think 9 did what 7 wanted to, and they just kind of learned from it as they went forward. I don't think it ever regressed. And then 13 was its whole thing. I remember when 13 came out, it was a gorgeous game on the PS3. The game not so hot, and now people go back to it and being like, it's not as bad as you remember it. But there's always that argument now of like, oh, 1 through 6 are better, the pixel games are better, and I'm like, they're not.
Like that's the thing. Final Fantasy has a huge legacy of being 2D, but the 3D ones are the biggest ones of the series. It's a 3D series, bro.
Like
let's
everyone,
stop pretending it isn't.
I think the success of the remake of 7 everyone wants a remake of 9, and I think that one's the most adjacent to 7 in terms of like seeing it into fruition. But there's a lot of people who want to push 6. And I agree with that in one sense, and I disagree with that in another sense, because no matter what you do with a remake of 6, people will be unhappy.
Yeah.
Because it did start as, you know, a 2D pixel game. So I think there's something to be said about Dissidia, and not a lot of people talk about Dissidia, where it was kind of like Smash for Final Fantasy, but in a weird battle. They had their own battle mechanic system thing, but it was a 3D game and 3D models for all of the characters from every single game. So it was like the first time we saw a lot of these pixel characters in like 3D models. Like I remember seeing like Onion Knight and Terra, and Furion like all in 3D, and I was like, what? This is what they imagined you looking like in 3D, but like the 2D like character art was so good for it. I think Nomura did all the character art for it because it looks like his style. But I'm like, okay, if you guys are okay with that, that's what you'll get in the translation. So I think there's a big argument with, do people really want that? And I don't really think it's a great idea. I think if they're going to do a remake, they need to do what they're doing with Dragon Warrior 3 and do the HD 2D.
Yep.
I
Full-fledged, like, you know, remake HD 2D, like, from the ground up, completely new builds of all of the environments and everything. I think it would look amazing, but I don't think I really want the 7 treatment. Mm-hmm. I don't think I want the 7 remake treatment for those games.
7's its own beast, man.
Yep.
Yep. I agree.
I was going to say one of my favorite properties excelled in 3D, and people forget there's even 2D versions of it. Metal Gear. People don't even know about Metal Gear 1, 2, and Snake's Revenge because...
I didn't know about 2 and Snake's Revenge.
To be blunt,
I only know about the first one.
They don't play great. Part of it is the genre is too big for the dimensions. Like, making a 2D stealth game is extremely difficult. Where you have to shoot, you have to sneak. You can't tell what direction people are looking. Like, It was a great idea, but the limitations of 2D cost it. And then as soon as it went 3D, obviously it changed, like, the scope of gaming in a lot of ways. So
are those, like, top-down 2D stealth or side-scroller?
They're pretty much side-scrollers.
But it's kind of top-down. You go from
There's
room to room.
different screens that are, like, top-down, but it's still on a 2D plane, if that makes sense. So
is it like side-scroller
there's
this
vertical
way?
screens and horizontal screens, like, as you go through.
But it's not
screens.
top-down. You traverse an
ISO.
environment. Okay.
Yeah. And then even then, that's what I'm saying. When you're shooting, it's like almost on a plane too. So it's difficult to hit stuff.
I'd be interested to see how they would do an isometric,
They age-
2-dimensional stealth.
Yeah, it'd be
If
interesting.
they didn't do that.
But like the stealth genre is so much better in 3D. Like Splinter Cell would never work in 2D.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think stealth is a
It's
genre
all about
that
angles,
works.
right? And lighting and stuff that just wasn't around in 2D. So it was a cool concept at the time. But like, you know, the console version of that game is dog shit. The PC version's better, the MSX version, but like you look at Solid and you're like, this is what they were trying to do. Just they weren't, the 2D limited it. So that's like my pick for, thank God we got a 3D version, because like imagine a world where Metal Gear was faded into obscurity because it stayed on 2D.
I'm going to go old school with my pick, Duke Nukem, because
That's a really good point too.
the first 2 Duke Nukem games, like, they wouldn't hold up now. It would be nothing. I know Duke's kind of a joke now, but for how big of a deal it was, like, growing up, like, it was the really only competition until Quake came out to give Duke a run for its money.
Yeah, the Duke games aren't horrible in 2D. They just weren't.
But no one would talk about them
right.
now.
They were
Yeah,
very
that's
simple.
why I laughed, because I was like,
Yeah.
wasn't expecting Duke Nukem
Yeah.
to come up.
Exactly. I think most people don't even remember the non-3D Duke
Yeah.
Nukem games, but like that's what it was before we got Duke 3D,
Duke
whereas
3D.
and it was like the first big first-person shooter you
Sorry.
could like. You're good. It was the first big first-person shooter where you could like look around the environment instead of just walking with a set gun. Like you actually had to aim up and down vertically. So it did the most for first-person shooters than people give it credit for. That's my pick.
People love Duke, bro. I don't know how Duke would come back, but
It's a thing of it's a product of its time.
Definitely a product
I think
of its
the last
time.
game proved that, but for what it did for the actual genre,
No doubt.
huge.
huge.
You guys remember when I mentioned if they made a racing game, if it was a guy with the shades on and a goatee, but he had a bald head and a wife beater shirt? That's what I imagine a new age Duke Nukem, but not racing, just shooter. Am I wrong?
Not really.
Not the Duke Nukem's bald and wearing a
Right.
shirt, but I feel like the same
Energy.
That's
It's got
the
the same
energy that it would
aesthetic.
attract. Yeah.
Monster tattoos.
Drywall,
Monster
drywall stuck in
energy.
the knuckles.
Probably some Browning hunting that's never been on an actual hunting trip in their life. Yeah.
Oh my god.
This babe's got pink camo.
Yep.
Playboy tat on the neck.
Stop.
Oh, I can see it now. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. If you guys have any examples, I'd love to hear it. This is, the kind of fun episodes where we just have a conversation about whatever comes up. We want you guys to be included. Hit us up on Discord. Episode show notes, again, is where you'll find that invite link. Thanks for listening. What's next?
Next episode, Is It Worth It? From Working Designs, Vanguard Bandits, which has been creeping up as one of the most expensive PlayStation 1 games, surprisingly, in the last couple of years. It's been climbing. So, Vanguard Bandits is a tactical RPG about kingdoms in medieval times, but they also have mechs. So,
Sounds like a game made just for you.
we'll see how the game plays next time on Collecti-Bros podcast.
Hey, y'all, stay oppressed.
Reach for the stars, break the ceiling,
Y'all know how it is by now. Stay oppressed.
watch Batman Beyond and you'll get it, I guess.
Shh. That's the ceiling breaking out.